today? Are we over the experiment that is the City Kickboxing Crew? Can we finally say that some of these fighters are good, some of them are just average, and the ones that were extremely good might be slipping? Also, has anyone checked on Luke Thomas? Because he's been talking about the City Kickboxing Crew for the last 5 years, and now that I think they may have fallen off, he might be in trouble. And we're going to go over some of the fights this Saturday night in the Apex. All of this and more on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. So first off, at the top of the show, we're going to be discussing the City Kickboxing Crew. I know what you're thinking, but Matt, what? You can't say anything bad about the City Kickboxing Crew. It's not allowed in MMA. Well, that's different. That is different, because this City Kickboxing Crew, they're questionable. Questionable at best. Let's get into it. Let's start at the very tippity top. Stylebender Israel Adesanya, who is currently on leave. So Adesanya goes out there, he has his first fight with Alex Pereira in the UFC, in which he took a glorious L, and I was extremely happy and excited for it. It was one of the happiest nights on a Saturday night of my life that didn't include other things and other people. Nevertheless, bro, it was great. Here's the thing. Then you fast forward, he gets a big win in the rematch against Alex Pereira, right? So that was good. You're thinking, oh, he's on an all-time high. Yeah, he made fun of a 7-year-old, maybe a 9-year-old, being Alex Pereira's son. But still, he's on an all-time high. He's back. They're back in the saddle. Then, as you move a little bit further forward, all of these weird allegations start coming out about Izzy and dogs and a whole lot of other stuff. The next thing you know, he has his weird kind of race baiting moments with Dricus du Plessis in the cage, which I still stand for Dricus du Plessis in that situation. And everyone like me is trying to scream to the world like, bro, Izzy is not that dude anymore. All right? Like, yeah, he's an extremely good fighter, but outside of the octagon, this is not a good dude, man. I don't care what y'all be talking about. This is not a good dude. So then you fast forward. His coach talks a lot of mess about Dricus du Plessis, because Dricus du Plessis was going to be forced to take this fight on like 6 or 7 weeks of a training camp right after coming out of a really big fight with Robert the Reaper Whittaker, in which he finished him, something that Izzy couldn't do in the last time that him and Robert fought, I should say. And Dricus goes out there, finishes him. They wanted to turn right around in like 6 weeks and go ahead and fight all over again. And the man had a really bad foot injury, and he wasn't going to be able to do it. And Eugene Behrman, being the coach of Israel Adesanya, goes out there and lambasts him and says all this crazy stuff about him. Well, you must be prepared to... Hush up, Eugene, all right? We ain't got time to be sitting around trying to decipher what you're talking about. Nevertheless, Eugene goes out there and says all this crazy stuff. And then Dricus du Plessis doesn't get the fight. Enters Sean Strickland, a man that Eugene Behrman and Israel Adesanya had made fun of multiple times prior to their fight. Multiple times. Izzy's in videos talking about making fun of his fighting style. Eugene Behrman talking about that fight. We're not even going to do an impression of him because, whatever. Bro, Eugene Behrman is basically out here saying that, yeah, Sean Strickland talks a good game, but he hasn't won the fights to be able to fight Izzy. Then all of a sudden, when Dricus doesn't want to turn around on 6 weeks' notice because he's got a bad foot injury, it ain't like he just chilling on the couch like, bro, I don't know if I can beat her in 6 weeks. I mean, the man's got an injury, but let's move on. They give the fight to Sean Strickland. Eugene can't wait to give it to Strickland then when Dricus wasn't able to do the fight. Then more and more dog stuff comes out, literally about Israel Adesanya and all these weird things, and Sean Strickland's going at calling him Chinaman and all this crazy stuff, right? Bro, then the next thing you know, he goes out there and he takes a vicious, horrible L. Vicious in the sense it was a 5-round shellacking. 5 rounds he took Israel Adesanya to the woodshed like Izzy's parents should have did when he was younger and showed him what was what and how life was gonna go. You know what I'm talking about? So then, the next thing you know, Kai Kara France, at some point he's got to pull off a fight due to having a bad injury. Eugene, I thought your fighters still go in there and fight anyway. So you got Izzy sitting on the sidelines now who also got caught up in some sort of a DUI fiasco, whatever. I think that's going to definitely blow over. I don't think that's going to be a big deal. So I'm not going to serve the man about that. But, Izzy needs to take a little time off, which, it's understood. He has been having a healthy fight schedule. He's taking a little bit of time off. Meanwhile, Kai Kara France, as I just brought up a second ago, he was supposed to be the man at 125. He was supposed to be that dude. He's out there looking like a chump. You know what I'm saying? He gets injured. Then he can't win the big one. He can't put on the big show, the big win, the big fight when it comes time to win the big fight. You know what I'm talking about? So you scoop him to the side, as well as the reason why I'm really going at City Kickboxing. We're about to get to this one individual in just a minute. But then you look at Eugene Behrman. He kind of looks silly now because also, I'm not including Alexander Volkanovski in the City Kickboxing Crew because if you check, he's not even really listed on their website because he has his own coach that he's been with, but he likes also working with Eugene Behrman, but he's not really officially the guy in that camp. Now, he does train with those guys, but he's not really in that camp. You know what I'm saying? Or with that group, I should say. So you can take him out. Y'all can't keep claiming Volk like he's actually in the City Kickboxing Crew. Then, shout out to Carlos Ulberg. He's out there doing his thing. He's looking solid. He's looking good. But bro, then we're going to move on to the guy that I'm bringing all this fire and rain upon everybody as it pertains to City Kickboxing. You got Dan the Hangman Hooker. So, Dan Hooker, let's be honest. Dan Hooker shouldn't have beat Paul Felder. He should have lost on the scorecards on that, right? Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there. Dan Hooker hasn't looked the same ever since Barbosa had his way with him, and ever since Dustin Poirier went out and put them diamond cuts on him, and that was the end of him. You know what I'm talking about? Dan Hooker has not really looked the same. Now, he's had a win here and there since then, but it just hasn't been the same Dan Hooker. However, Dan Hooker's out here on these shows talking like he's the same Dan Hooker for 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. You're not the same dude. We all felt for you during quarantine. They're showing pictures of him on the other side of a fence and his daughter's on the other side because he would have to quarantine before he could get back in the country. I felt bad for the dude. Man, lean into being humble, bro. Because people felt bad for you and you were losing these fights and you just wanted to see your daughter and you had to be quarantined because of New Zealand's rules and all this stuff. And it's like, bro, we felt you. Pause. You know what I'm saying? But then you fast forward to now, Dan Hooker, barely, shout out to him because he had that dog in him. He barely outlasted Jalen Turner. You know what I'm saying? And that was a weight miss Jalen Turner. That wasn't the Jalen Turner that went out there against Bobby Green. King Bobby Green. I tell you that. But that was a Jalen Turner drained after a weight miss, bad weight cut. You know what I'm saying? Dan Hooker goes out there, still barely won the fight. But shout out to him. He won it with a broken arm. You know what I'm talking about? So shout out to him. But he's still out here talking like you're that Dan Hooker we're worried about. And it's like I would relate that to some sports. Sometimes you got teams that had tremendous seasons. Then they come back the next season and they're not really as good as they were the previous season. But they still out here talking like they still that team. No, my dude, you not that team no more. We not fearing you no more. This ain't the same team from last year. That's the way it is with Dan Hooker. So he's out here, he's doing interviews with Ariel Helwani. And he's taking shots at the lightweight champion Islam Makhachev. And I'm like, bro, he's taking shots at Sarukin. And you're like, bro. And he's talking down on him and talking about pay-per-views wouldn't sell. And, Makhachev will retire before he takes a tough fight and all this. First of all, Dan Hooker. Man, let's get into it, bro. He already beat your boy twice. Alexander Volkanovski. Got 2 L's on his record. Both of them there by Makhachev, okay? So, and I don't even want to go there because I like Alexander Volkanovski, you know what I'm saying? But that's first off. Dan Hooker spoke out the most about Makhachev and the whole IV controversy when he fought Volk in Australia. Dan Hooker, they didn't prove nothing. It was highlighted. It was within the rules, whatever happened. So please, once again, go have several seats. Dan Hooker refuses to have several seats. He comes out here off barely beating a weight-drained, weight-missed Jalen Turner. And you're trying to talk mess about the lightweight champions. And it kills me when these fighters that get on Ariel's show, and Ariel, to his credit, he a lot of the time, if he doesn't have an agenda, he'll let the fighters be the fighters. So he's letting Dan the Hangman talk. And Ariel's even highlighting it during that episode and the following episode where he's like, I just think Hangman hates Makhachev. And that's what all that was. That was definitely what all that was. But at the end of the day, dude, you barely beat Jalen Turner, who was weight drained and missed weight. And granted, you did it with a broken arm, so shout out to you. You got that dog in you. But my dude, you're not that guy. You had a point where you was a prospect. It seemed like you might be that guy, but you're not that guy. You're not going to be that guy. So my dude, have several seats. See your way out the door for a little while. Heal up, get back in there. Maybe they'll do the Bobby Green fight now. You know what I'm saying? Whatever they're going to do. But dude, quit talking about people that are competing at the highest level of the sport and excelling while you're still trying to capitalize off of who you once were. Now that I've torched and flamed Dan Hooker, no, shout out to Dan Hooker. I don't really hate the man, but I just felt like, come on, bro. Come on, you ain't the same Dan Hooker. Anyway, let's move on, ladies and gentlemen, as I check my Nizotes. It's going down this Saturday night in the Apex. The UFC returns with what is being billed as Shanghai Vegas. Las Shanghai. Apex at the Shanghai. But really the card's in Las Vegas because all the major fights they wanted to do in China all fell through. So they're like, well, we got to go to Las Vegas. Where in the main event, we are going to see Song Yadong stepping in the octagon with Chris Gutierrez. Let's start out with this fight. I'm not going to cover all the fights on this card because it's Shanghai Vegas. It ain't really like that. No disrespect to the fighters on the card. But we're going to throw out a couple picks. The main event, Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. At first, I was really thinking about this, and this was a hard one for me to call because Chris Gutierrez looked great in his last fight, and the man's leg kicks are unmatched or unrivaled, But at the same time, when I really think about it, I think Song Yadong just got too many skills and too many attributes that are the same or better than Chris Gutierrez. So, Song Yadong is extremely quick. He's technical. He has good technical striking. He has good takedown defense, good wrestling defense. He's great at scramble. He's got Uriah Faber, training him. So he's extremely good on the ground. He's good at taking the back. He's good at rear naked chokes. He's got power. He's got a chin on him. You know what I'm saying? So, this guy, you haven't really seen him outclass, probably. I would say, yeah, he hasn't been outclassed. I don't feel like in the octagon where you're like, okay, Song Yadong is just not on that level. You know what I mean? But at the same time, this guy, I think, I don't know if he'll be a future champion, but he could be. So that's how good he is. I'm going to go with him to go out there and get the win over Chris Gutierrez. Co-main event, we got Anthony Smith stepping in on relative short notice against Khalil Roundtree Jr. Bro, Anthony Smith has been washed. Okay, I'm just gonna say that he's been washed. Don't try to come at me. Don't try to tell me nothing otherwise. Anthony Smith been washed for a long time. It was a shame and it was disrespectful that Ryan Spann went out there and lost that fight because Ryan Spann should have won it. But Ryan Spann's got questionable octagon IQ, so shout out to him, but he needs to fix a couple things. Anthony Smith has been washed for a long time. His body is brittle. It can't withstand a lot of the punishment that goes on in the octagon. And he just doesn't look like the Anthony Smith that was on that title run or that title chase that lost to John Jones. That's just what it is, bro. So, I mean, Khalil Roundtree has been looking awesome here lately. He's on a nice little win streak. I mean, I got no other reason to believe that Khalil Roundtree won't go out there and do work against Anthony Smith. Another fight I wanted to touch on, Nasrat Haqparast. Nasrat Haqparast going in there against Jamie Mullarkey. This one was another one I really thought about because I don't think that Jamie Mullarkey is washed or done, and I don't think he's full-blown chinny. He chinny, though. He got a little bit of chin issues. I'm talking about chin's a little... he got a little bit of chin issues, but I wouldn't say he's officially chinny. Like, what I'm saying? You barely touch his chin and he's... I don't think he's quite there yet. But when I was really thinking about it, Nasrat's been looking pretty good, He's been looking pretty good in his last few fights. He was kind of on a bad little losing streak for, a little hot second. But he had some personal things going on with his family. He was also dealing with COVID. A lot of crazy stuff going on during that time. So, with that being said, I mean, it kind of is what it is. But, shout out to him. I think he's going to go out there and he's going to get the win over Jamie Mullarkey. We got Tim Elliott stepping in there on short notice to face his opponent. I apologize if I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce your name. Sumudari. I'm going to go along with Tim Elliott on this. I think Tim Elliott is a cagey veteran. He's coming off of a loss, against Makayev, but at the same time, I mean, it is Makayev. So I'm going to go along with Tim Elliott to go out there and get the win. Only other fight I kind of think I just want to get into real quick is my dude, the Iron Turtle, Jung Young Park, going in there against Andre Muniz. Here's the thing. Andre Muniz is not the same Andre Muniz from a few fights ago. Now, he ain't as fallen off as Dan the Hangman Hooker, but he's not the same Andre Muniz. And shout out to the Iron Turtle. Park is doing his thing. He's been doing his thing. He's somewhat of an unassuming guy, but he packs dynamite in his hands. He's one of those guys that goes out there and he gets the job done. He's not a spectacular striker. He's not a spectacular wrestler. You wouldn't necessarily say he's got that dog in him. You know what I'm saying? But Jung Young Park goes out there and he just wins. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he's had losses in his career, but he still just goes out there and he wins. He finds a way to get it done. So shout out to him. I think he is going to get it done. I think he's going to go out there and defeat Andre Muniz. Outside of that, Tatsuro Taira stepping in the octagon against Carlos Hernandez. I do think Carlos Hernandez is going to be an extremely tough task for Taira. I believe that it's going to be not like a dog fight, but I think it's going to be a tough fight for him because Carlos Hernandez definitely does have good takedown defense. He's good in scrambles. He's got good wrestling defense. But I think Taira's going to go out there and get the job done. But, those are a few of the fights I wanted to highlight from UFC, Shanghai, Vegas, Apex Shanghai, Las Vegas, China, whatever you want to call it. I wanted to highlight that. It goes down this Saturday night. We're going to check it out. I appreciate you guys. Please like, subscribe, comment, let me know what you think. And I do want to thank you for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I'll check you next time. Peace.